authorities arrested 9 undocumented immigrants who, according to the acting ICE director, have lengthy rap sheets for crimes such as robbery, domestic violence, and drug trafficking.
They say more than 200 people have been arrested in the last few weeks just here in Oregon, including at least 30 in Woodburn just yesterday.
America just witnessed a shockwave as ICE stormed into an anti-Trump protest and arrested over 1,500 illegal aliens in a single night. What started as a march for justice exploded into one of the biggest drug busts in U.S. history. Yes, I'm talking about 1.3 tons of narcotics hidden in plain sight. The streets of Portland turned from protest grounds to a federal battlefield. And what agents uncovered there has the nation's jaw on the floor.
How about Portland, Oregon, where it looks like a war zone?
President Donald Trump today doubling down on sending National Guard troops to Portland.
It started like every other protest. Loud voices, waving banners, and calls for justice. But within hours, something snapped. The chants turned to screams. The air filled with sirens, and ICE agents stormed through the night like a shockwave tearing through chaos. By dawn, 2,500 people were under arrest. What the cameras didn't expect was what came next.
9 immigrants were arrested during the chaotic scene that played out on Canal yesterday. It was around this time. Officials say 4 Americans were taken into custody, but then later released.
Hidden beneath tents and banners were 1.3 tons of narcotics. Fentanyl, meth, cocaine, all disguised as aid supplies. The scene that began as an anti-Trump protest had just transformed into one of the largest drug busts in U.S. history. And the irony cut like a blade. A protest for freedom had been hijacked by the very people profiting from America's decay.
Tuesday afternoon, Customs, ATF, and DEA agents detained some of the vendors who often hail from West Africa.
Portland had been here before. The flashpoints, the outrage, the blue line on the pavement marking the edge of federal property. All of it was a replay from the chaos of 2020. But this time, the stakes were nuclear. Back then, Oregon officials had accused federal agents of aggression, parading cropped and silent footage that showed arrests without warnings, violence without cause. But when uncut clips surfaced, the story flipped. Federal officers had issued clear commands. Protesters had crossed into restricted zones, throwing projectiles and flashing high-powered lasers into officers' eyes. The blue line wasn't a metaphor. It was a border, and crossing it meant war.
Videos all filmed in the same month, all showing the new reality of law enforcement and immigration policy in Donald Trump's America.
Barry, at least people were taken into custody by federal agents. I want to show you what is happening right now. It is pretty calm as those protesters gather outside of this ICE building, but we have not seen the amount of aggression from ICE agents in the last couple of days compared to tonight. In fact,
for years, Oregon played this dangerous game of denial, painting the feds as villains while shielding those stirring the flames. So when this latest anti-Trump rally kicked off, nobody expected the script to flip so violently. The slogans were recycled, the chants the same, even the faces familiar. But behind the signs and smoke was a network so tightly woven it fooled everyone, until ICE intelligence picked up something strange.
That it wasn't just undocumented immigrants arrested yesterday by ICE. He said 4 U.S. citizens were also taken into custody and held overnight around the corner at 26 Federal.
Days before the protest, unmarked vans had started rolling in. They carried banners reading community aid and medical supplies, but their routes told a different story. They weren't coming from hospitals or relief centers. They were driving up from cartel routes in southern Oregon. Something was being moved under the radar, and the protest was their perfect cover.
Ho, ho! That fascist Trump has got to go! Hey, hey! Ho, ho! That fascist Trump has got to go! Hey, hey! Ho, ho!
As the crowd gathered, chaos became camouflage. Drones captured hundreds pouring into downtown Portland. Their flashlights pointed straight at federal buildings. The same tactic used years earlier to blind security cameras. Protest leaders screamed through megaphones, "Turn off your lights," whenever journalists tried to film. At the time, it sounded like paranoia. Later, it would sound like a warning, because when ICE made their move, those very vans turned out to be mobile drug labs. 1.3 tons of narcotics, tucked beneath crates of bottled water and first aid kits, ready to be shipped across state lines, while the nation's attention fixated on the protest.
What they recovered, narcotics, including heroin, cocaine, and a trove of pills laced with deadly fentanyl.
When agents finally raided the scene, everything happened in seconds. Sirens cut through the chants, helicopters circled, officers in tactical gear swarmed the area, protesters shouted, "Overreach!" as floodlights exposed what was really happening behind the tents. By the time the dust cleared, ICE had coordinated with Homeland Security to seize multiple vehicles, detain 2,500 people, and uncover one of the largest illegal shipments Oregon had ever seen. And then came the image no one could forget: the peace vans being hauled away, covered in spray paint and slogans of freedom, now packed with poison. What was supposed to be a protest for justice had just become a front-page scandal. But even that wasn't the most shocking part.
There's always violence associated with drugs, and to argue that it's not is either a misinformed interpretation or just plain stupidity.
When the evidence hit Washington, the connections were undeniable. Many of the people arrested weren't first-timers. They were repeat agitators, the same individuals caught in federal clashes years ago. The overlap was chilling. The same tactics, the same symbols, the same media manipulation. It wasn't chaos, it was choreography, and the deeper federal investigators dug, the clearer the pattern became. Cartel networks were piggybacking on political unrest, moving shipments through no-go zones created by protest chaos. The line between activism and exploitation had officially been erased.
President Trump overstepped his authority by federalizing Oregon's National Guard.
Then came the spin. Within hours, Oregon officials called it federal overreach again. The governor's office accused ICE of targeting peaceful demonstrators, and state media jumped on the narrative. The footage they played was predictable: shaky, silent, cropped. No mention of the vans, no mention of the drugs, just another cycle of outrage packaged for television. That same playbook from 2020, replayed frame by frame. But this time, the feds were ready. Homeland Security released unedited footage with audio, showing warnings given, instructions repeated, and evidence pulled straight from the vans in plain sight. The silence wasn't ignorance anymore, it was strategy.
This is a militarized effort to incite tension, passion, and inflame the communities in New York City.
Oregon refused to call in the National Guard despite the growing unrest. For them, it was never about order, it was about optics. But outside the state, America was watching. And the question was echoing: how deep did this go? Because 2,500 arrests don't happen by accident, and 1.3 tons of narcotics don't move themselves. The story was unraveling faster than the state could bury it. And that's when two old names reappeared, the ones who had been there since the beginning.
Portland police refused to come in and make an arrest, and I had 3 officers just standing there watching me try to hunt down this suspect.
Katie Davis Court and Honey Badger Mom, the citizen journalists who, back in 2020, captured the uncut truth about the Portland riots, the laser attacks, the blue line crossings, the warnings ignored. They'd been dismissed back then, accused of bias, attacked for filming what others edited out. But now, their footage looked prophetic, because the new protest followed the exact same playbook. The same groups that had once claimed peaceful protest were now tied to vans full of narcotics. Katie's old words resurfaced online like an echo from the past. If you erase context, you erase truth. And that's exactly what was happening again. Footage began vanishing from local outlets. Links disappeared. Full-length videos were flagged or quietly pulled. When new clips did surface, they were eerily familiar. Muted, cropped, emotion without evidence. Protesters screaming federal tyranny while standing feet from seized drug shipments. The pattern was clear. When light was turned on the truth, someone always rushed to turn it off. Literally. Turn off your lights. Wasn't just about flashlights anymore. It was a battle cry for censorship. Meanwhile, Katie and Honey Badger refused to back down. Their new footage went viral, showing ICE agents giving clear warnings, showing vans opened with drugs spilling out, showing arrests handled by the book. But even as millions watched, the state's response was silence. Oregon's local networks barely covered the seizures. Instead, they aired panels on federal intimidation. The irony was almost unbearable. The same outlets demanding transparency were now ignoring evidence that didn't fit their narrative. The same government calling for accountability was burying proof of criminal infiltration. It wasn't just hypocrisy, it was control.
Because this has been going on for a long time now, and just out of nowhere, they want to crack down on it.
Yesterday's raid led to a chaotic scene on Canal Street as ICE protesters protesters broke out their cell phone cameras to document the actions of masked agents.
And that's the real story. The hidden war between perception and proof. This wasn't just a Portland crisis. This was a national warning. Because if protests can become shields for trafficking, and footage can be edited into fiction, what's left of truth itself? 1,500 arrests isn't just a statistic, it's a symptom. It's proof that chaos has become a weapon, and outrage its delivery system. The line between lawful dissent and organized deception has blurred into smoke, and behind that smoke, power moves unseen.
Even though there's been people of all ages doing this type of crime, a 68-year-old female is not a usual suspect.
The blue line, once meant to protect both sides, had become a battlefield marker again, a symbol of how fragile order really is. Every protest, every chant, every edited clip wasn't just a story of defiance. It was a tool in a larger game. Because when outrage becomes profitable, chaos isn't accidental. It's engineered, and that's the haunting part. This wasn't about Trump. It wasn't about ICE. It was about how far manipulation can go before truth collapses completely.
Tensions are running high across the country over immigration raids and National Guard deployments. The courts are now getting involved as residents fight back.
By the time the dust settled, Portland was divided in two. Those who believed the FAF arrests were justified, and those convinced it was tyranny. But both sides were missing the point. The real story wasn't about who was right. It was about who was hiding, who funded the protest vans, who coordinated the shipments, and why did the state suppress the drug connection? The silence was deafening, the same silence that filled the old clips, stripped of sound to hide the truth. Only now, that silence had spread beyond footage. It had swallowed the narrative itself, and maybe that's the most dangerous part. Because every time truth is edited, every time context is erased, someone benefits. The chaos wasn't just in the streets anymore. It was in the story. The manipulation wasn't random. It was systematic. The blue line wasn't just a border between property and protest. It was the last dividing line between reality and illusion.
Now they're saying these arrests are not about public safety, but instead about fear.
As night fell on Portland again, the city felt haunted, not by ghosts, but by patterns. The same mistakes, the same players, the same silence. A cycle repeating so perfectly it almost felt intentional, because maybe it was. And that's where this all leads, not to closure, but to a question that refuses to die. Was this justice or a setup? Were protesters victims or pawns in a game too big for them to see? The drugs are real. The arrests are real. The silence is real. And yet, truth remains buried under edits, headlines, and hashtags. America isn't facing a protest problem anymore. It's facing a truth problem. Because peace doesn't start with chants or slogans. It starts with honesty. And if you silence half the footage, you silence reality itself. That's what this all comes down to. Not politics, not sides, but something much simpler. How much truth can a nation lose before it stops recognizing itself? So here's the real question. After everything, the arrests, the seizures, the lies, the silence, what happens the next time the blue line is crossed? Will it be justice again? Chaos again? Or something far darker waiting just beyond the cameras?